What is happening, everybody? Back again, and back with another shotgun. So this is the SRM 1216 shotgun. It is a very unique semi-auto shotgun that incorporates a proprietary magazine tube design. It's this rotary magazine right here that incorporates 4 different tubes. Each tube can hold up to 4 shells, either 2 3/4 inch, or I believe you can actually put 3-inch in these as well. Don't quote me on that. Yep, never mind. Right here, 2 3/4 and 3-inch shells. So that gives you a capacity of 16. Plus, you can put 1 in the chamber, and that is a lot of firepower out of a 12 gauge shotgun, obviously. So in this world of these high capacity unique shotguns, you know, we're talking the KSG, we're talking the DP12, maybe the Origin 12. This kind of falls right in line with some of those. Now, obviously, it being a semi-auto, it's more closely related to likely the Origin 12, or just a Sega, or a just any type of AK platform shotgun, and that's what you have here, with the exception of a very huge advantage, and that is that you're not adding any length or any weight down here at the bottom with a attachable magazine that drops from the chamber. So with that, it's a nice streamlined package. It's very lightweight. You know, even when it's fully loaded, I would guesstimate that we're looking at about 8.5 to 9 pounds fully loaded, with 17 shells. Now, obviously, I have not loaded one in the chamber. I never do so for obvious purposes, but if you wanted to release the magazine, you've got a button that's right here at the front versus the little lever mechanism that's here on either side. So fully ambidextrous. This would be to rotate the magazine, and you can rotate in either direction. But once you lift this, you are able to rotate the magazine and rechamber a round as soon as it does rotate to the next tube that's available. So to release, you just push this button, out goes the magazine. So as you can tell here, you've got 4 tubes. They are spring loaded, just like any other shotgun magazine tube would be, but the difference is that you've got this little weird looking contraption here at the center that holds the shells captive, and it does have a primary and secondary lip, because as you rotate, it does sort of lift the shell above to this gap area right here. So that's kind of your first lip right there, and it's being held by the second lip thereafter, and goes into the chamber as soon as it's rotated into this slot. So I hope that makes sense. But the nice thing about this is that you can obviously put different loads in each tube. You can color code the tubes, you can mark them however you want to recognize that you've got a different load in one tube versus the other. And it allows you to really kind of incorporate lethal and non-lethal rounds. However, I will say that this being a semi-auto delayed roller shotgun, so much like an HK MP5 or some of the other roller lock HK weapons back in the day, this does have a couple bearings on the back of the bolt that cause a delay in the blowback, and that's supposed to soften up your recoil a little bit. So with that being said, this gun does not really like light loads. So anything that's low brass, birdshot, stuff like that, it probably will not cycle all that well. Now, that's not to say that you can't cycle that kind of stuff once you've got it broken in, and if it's cycling smoothly through, lighter load buck or whatever else you've put through it, chances are that it'll get to a point at some point in the future where you can cycle some good quality bird load and target load. But at least through that break-in period, it will really only like defensive ammunition, and for good reason. This is a defensive shotgun, so this is not meant for target shooting and whatnot. It's meant more for defense, military, law enforcement, and so on and so forth. So the way that you would put this magazine in is basically just starting at the back end over here, putting in this little slot, and then you are just lifting up, and that locks it into place. And if it's not aligned, like you just saw right there, all you got to do is turn it a little bit, and it'll lock into place once you've actually centered one of the tubes into the extraction chamber. So it's a very important note that if you are loading this and the bolt is locked open, it will chamber around. So it is important that you keep the bolt and slide closed here if you do not want a live round going into the chamber automatically. So maybe some would consider that a safety issue. I consider it a pretty common sense reason as to why you'd want that to happen. If you are using this shotgun in a defensive situation, you don't want to have to delay with racking the chamber every time. So I would prefer it that way, and just know that, if I'm trying to keep this thing empty, and if I'm putting a magazine that's filled, all I have to do on my end is just to make sure that the bolt is closed before I actually engage that magazine. So you've got, on this side of the gun, you've got your bolt release right over here. And it is a very stiff bolt release. So that needs a little work on it in order to free it up a little bit. But it does require quite a bit of pressure in order to get that bolt to roll forward. When it is locked open, you have a safety that's right here on this side. So it's just at this point, it's a right hand safety right here. So you can change this over to the left side. But the way it works is kind of in reverse of what you would find on an AR. So the actual lever portion of it is at the front end, and you're basically lowering it to drop to safe, lifting it to lift to fire, and it does not have a very defined detent. It doesn't really have an audible click. It's kind of one of the things I don't like about it. But it's a 45-degree throw. It does have a little block over here, so you can't over travel or anything like that, both on the bottom and on the top over here. So in either case, as long as you're pressed up against the blocks, you know that you're good. It's got a pretty decent trigger on it. It's about a 5.5 to 6 pound trigger, very crisp, no over travel. It's very AR like, and got a very nice audible reset to it. It's got plenty of real estate over here so that you can put optics, you can put backup sights and whatnot. So these are the backup iron sights that SRM has available, and they're nice. They're kind of they're kind of reminiscent to the diamond head backup sights that you'd normally find, but in any case, they're not that great, just because they're not very stable when they're upright, especially if you got a lot of recoil going. They tend to move around a little bit, but they do their job for the most part. So especially since you do have the option to add a red dot sight, which on a shotgun like this, especially if you're going to be using slugs, it's probably a good idea to put some sort of an optic on here, and it's not going to be something that's kind of on there for no purpose, because you're basically looking at a shotgun here, and all you're worried about is just kind of pointing in the direction and firing. But no, this thing is going to be accurate. It's a full 18.5 inch barrel. and it's very nicely done. So I mean, the barrel's chrome lined. It's a, you know, it's a very accurate shotgun. So if you are firing some good quality slugs out of this thing, there's no reason why you can't hit your target out to distances of, you know, up to or more than 100 yards. So, you know, it's definitely usable if you're going to be using defensive loads, to put some sort of an optic on here. And you've got, you know, a bunch of stuff to make it, you know, something that you can use in tactical, to serve tactical purposes. So you got sling hooks everywhere on this thing. You got them at the front over here. You've got them at the rear, at the stock. You can flip this over to the other side. So again, ambidextrous is, you know, everything on the shotgun is ambidextrous. So if you wanted to flip this this, you know, sling loop over to this side, you can do so. Again, with the safety, you're able to move that over to the other side if you wanted to. But you know, it's a very, very well built and well thought out shotgun. Most of the reviews that you will see out there will say the same. They cycle very reliably so long as you're using good quality ammunition. They have, you know, loads of capacity, and a lot of use can be put into this thing so long as you learn how to use it, you learn some of the controls. They're very, I mean, for the most part, they're very AR-like, with the exception of obviously the rotary magazine. That takes some getting used to, but once you kind of develop that muscle memory of knowing which way you're going to keep rotating the magazine, obviously you want to stay consistent when you're doing that, and knowing how to operate the bolt release and the safety, which obviously, you know, it's pretty much a piece of cake. There's not much to it. It's just, you know, point and shoot thereafter, and really it just comes down to that rotary magazine and how well you learn how to use that. And you know, it's not rocket science, but it is something that does require a little bit of muscle memory. But because of the way that your hand's going to be placed on this thing, your support hand's going to be placed on it, it just kind of falls in place of where your thumb is going to be, where your hand's going to be, to operate that lever and then to rotate the magazine anyways. So again, a very well thought out design. And I would say that in terms of all of the high capacity shotguns, this one and the you know, KSG and the DP12 seem to make the best use of you know, all of that capacity in a small package. So this thing almost kind of looks like a bullpup in design. It is a little bit longer than what you'd get out of the KSG, but you don't have to worry about shells having to extract from back here right onto your wrist like the DP12 and the KSG do. Instead, you have a more traditional right side eject, much like an AR or any other rifle that has right side ejection. So again, most people that reviewed this thing will say the same about it, that it's a very reliable and very well thought out battle shotgun. And you know, I have very little to complain about with this thing so far. It's definitely a solid piece. The prices on these things are a little bit steep. So they used to go for about $1,500 or $1,600, and now in today's market, you're finding them for well over $2,000 even used. So they definitely have gone up in price, but so has everything else. So it's just kind of putting everything in perspective. And if you are looking for a semi-auto shotgun specifically, and you want high capacity, you know, you can do a lot worse than the SRM 1216, and you can't do a lot better. And that's kind of where this thing kind of falls. It's definitely a top, I'd say a top 3 semi-auto shotgun in terms of high capacity shotguns. Now, obviously, I'm not putting it in the same class as like a Benelli M4 or anything like that. Although I do believe that it performs very comparable to a Benelli, but the difference would be obviously that high capacity and the proprietary design, which does take some getting used to versus something like the Benelli where it's very intuitive because it's just basically point and shoot. So with that being said, the Origin 12 is probably the one that I would say competes with the shotgun more directly. And the Origin 12 is a little bit more expensive. And it does have a magazine, a standard, vertical magazine. So that's going to hinder your capacity unless you get a drum, and that drum really adds a lot of bulk and a lot of weight underneath this thing. So it's not quite as comfortable when you do use a drum. However, you still have that ability with an Origin 12 to have that type of capacity. Same thing with, like I said, a Sega shotgun or any one of the AK type of shotguns. So with that being said, guys, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments section. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you enjoy this content, I try to bring you guys something new every week. We're going to get into some accessory discussions. We'll have some different topics that are kind of hot topics out there in the marketplace today. I've got a Rifle Dynamics AK that I'd like to review at some point in the near future. So that'll probably be the next video up. But until then, stay tuned and we'll see you guys later.